Godzilla vs. Kong, a fantasy action-packed kaiju monster movie. Of course, you have to expect that there's going to be some suspension of disbelief, but as fans always do, and as I like to do, we have to at least make the effort as curious creatures to answer some of the questions and to see if it's possible to be a reality. One of those big questions is from the Godzilla vs. Kong movie about the Hollow Earth. This seems to be the most puzzling one. Where is the light coming from? Not there. Even if somehow the inside of the Hollow Earth has an opening where the core can be seen, it's still not enough to illuminate miles and miles of terrain with hills and mountains in the way, especially when you consider there's no reflective substance on the top part of the roof of the Hollow Earth where, mind you, there are also landscapes with their own gravitational pull. People theorize that it was bioluminescent lichen responsible for all of that light. Some say there's a second sun down there. How? Some just brush it off to it being Earth's core, which still doesn't answer the question of how so much of the depths of this place are illuminated, even on the sides where light supposedly wouldn't hit from a one-directional source. Let's touch on some of the theories, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and possibly take an L and propose something completely new that nobody has theorized. And to really understand where I'm coming from, we have to go back and look at the scenes from Godzilla vs. Kong and study them very carefully. Immediately upon entering the Hollow Earth, you can see everything is illuminated in what seems to be sunshine. There are even shadows on the side of the mountain. From what I can gather in this image, it looks like the light is being cast from the very top and slightly to the right, since the left side of the mountain is in shadow and the deeper parts are also shaded, as you can see here. It certainly doesn't look like the core is responsible for this, because as we know now, on the ceiling side of this region, there are also landscapes and clouds and water as well, so it's not like there's a gigantic crystal ball blinding the ground with the glory of God. It's either something is hanging from above casting the light, or there are different sources of light casting their illumination from different directions, or it just might look weird based on the consistency, or there's a highly reflective substance. Now here, in this scene, at the 57-minute and 50-second mark of the movie, we can see a bright point of light in the distance that looks like the sun. It's very clear that whatever that thing is, it's casting all of the light, but it's way too bright for us to make out what it is. As Kong and his team are falling through to the Hollow Earth, you can see that the light is stable where it is, and it's not actively moving or oscillating. Also, it seems as if there's some film inconsistency, as from an aerial shot, the place looks a lot brighter than it looks once you're looking at it from a horizontal plane. See the difference? It could also be a trick, an illusion, for the audience to see everything as really bright when they're going from a dark place into an immediately illuminated place. Throughout shots of the Hollow Earth, you can see the light is so bright that it reaches through even corners, which is odd and must mean that either the light is bouncing off the surfaces of the Hollow Earth, or there might be more than one point of light, but we only see one, so let's assume that there's just one. For the most part, when it's from a horizontal perspective, the casting of the light looks more accurate. As Kong is making his way to the mountains to pass through the inversion point, it's clear that this area is not as bright as where he just came from. It looks as though the light may be on the left-hand side, slightly behind us.
He seems to know where
And in the next shot, that is exactly what's confirmed. And then here, when he's at the top of the mountain, you can get a clearer view. Now, as he launches, you can see that there is no light back in this direction, or very little light. And if you're wondering why the light is now on his right-hand side and ahead, it's because when he went to the mountain, he turned around, so obviously the perspective changes. So it seems as though there is one point of light, and the closer you get to it is the brighter everything is. It's very possible that light is a constant, and so the area doesn't have day and night cycles as we know them, which would make the theory of the core being the light source a solid one. Except, if that light source was the core, things would be a lot hotter down there, and we know it isn't because the humans aren't wearing thermal suits, and they take off their helmets as well, and their gloves. There is no mention of a high temperature, and with Earth's core being estimated at over 10,800 degrees Fahrenheit, as hot as the surface of the sun, things would be roasting down there, and certainly the humans. Now I know, you may ask, but Altiore, the core looks like it's far away, and there are mountain tips in the way to block the light. Yes, but not the heat. isn't enough space and open air to dissipate the heat, nor is there enough water. And consider that if this is the core, if it's as hot as our sun, that is a problem. Have you ever been out to the desert or in the summer on a very hot day? You can die from heat stroke if you don't find shade, or you can even become severely affected by the humidity. People might make the argument that caves are cool because they're underground and unaffected by the surface weather patterns. But in Godzilla vs. Kong in the Hollow Earth, you can literally see that bright light shining at all times from the same direction. Frequently, we see Kong and his merry band of humans right in its path. With the sun being 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, it still feels very hot. Keep in mind how far the sun is away from the surface of the Earth. Despite what animation videos show you, the sun is 93 million miles away from Earth. To make things easier to understand, it takes 8 minutes for the light of the sun to reach the Earth. 8 minutes for light, the fastest moving thing that moves at 671 million miles per hour, and even still, the sun's heat is capable of killing us. Now for perspective, the Earth's core, which is as hot as the surface of the sun, is 1,802 miles below the Earth's surface. Now remember, the surface of the sun is as hot as the core of the Earth, but the sun is 93 million miles away from us. The core is 1,802 miles away from the surface of the Earth. So from the surface, or that tiny little sliver right here, to the middle of the Earth is 1,802 miles. Granted, in the movie, Kong and his team are not directly on the surface. They are now inside the Hollow Earth, and I can understand if they were in an area closed off from what we think to be the core, but the fact that we can see it, and it's radiating heat and light to everything, makes it highly unbelievable that in a real-world situation that humans would be able to properly function and survive in that area. Of course, don't let all the jibber-jabber make you think that I don't remember this is a sci-fi fantasy action movie with a nuclear dragon creature and a super large ape that can be airlifted by about a dozen transport helicopters, each with the capability of lifting 22 tons, but only a few of them can lift a 50,000-ton creature. But, this is fun. Of course, there isn't the vacuum of space to prevent dilution of heat, as is the case in space with our sun, and there probably are so many different elements or substances in the Hollow Earth that absorb a lot of the heat, but even still, especially when you consider that heat rises, well, it doesn't have much of a place to rise. There would have to be a ridiculous amount of heat trapped in these areas. I also went back to Godzilla vs. Kong the movie and looked at the shape of the Hollow Earth, which actually surprised me. This is the actual image of the Hollow Earth, and from what I can tell, there are a few setups that are possible here. As you can see, it is possible that the big ball in the middle is actually the Hollow Earth, and all these little spindles are tunnels leading to it. In this scenario, that ball is a mini Earth, and things exist on the outer edge of it, similar to how things operate on our actual Earth, or our surface. So, you slide through the tunnel, and you end up on the surface of this inside ball. Of course, the rest of Earth's solid meat still exists, which would explain why you have the ceiling, or the upper portions of the Hollow Earth. The other scenario is that the long tendrils don't just lead you inside of the Hollow Earth, but they themselves are the landscape. So these areas right here might be where Kong and the team are. It does look like where Kong and the team were located was a linear area that just went basically in a straight line on a flat plane. This configuration would make a lot of sense if you consider that the big ball in the middle is the core, and that would explain where the light is coming from. But what it would not explain is how creatures could just go through the Hollow Earth and out through the other side, since you would have to pass through the core unless there's more Hollow Earth in there. And I don't see any of these tendrils connecting. From what it looks like, they all go straight from the surface into the hole from their respective areas. If there was a crossover, for example, a bridge where you could hop from this tendril to that tendril, then I could see how that would make sense for you to traverse around the core and go out onto the surface. But that's not the case here. We've heard that the Titans use the Hollow Earth as some sort of shortcut, but not all of them could swim through the core of the Earth, so how would that be a thing? I could totally see Godzilla doing it, but not the majority of the Titans. Also, keep in mind that the core of the Earth has extreme pressure and heat. Another possible configuration is that the tendrils all lead into the Hollow Earth, and the landscapes that we saw are actually not on the outside, but on the inside of the ball, which would explain the hollowness, a hollow ball inside of the Earth. And while the core is probably a part of that configuration, it probably exists right in the middle somewhere. There's some other possibilities, but right now those are the main ones I can think of. You can also see that each of those tendrils lead to specific points on the Earth, which are their entry points into the Hollow Earth. And you can see one coming, or at least several of them, coming from Antarctica, which is where they started. Now, is it possible for there to be a sun down there in a movie like this? Why not? Some kind of dwarf star within the Earth? Possible in the realms of fantasy. The definition of a star is an astronomical object consisting of a luminous spirit of plasma and is held together by its own gravity, an entity made up of mostly hydrogen and helium. It produces light and heat from the churning nuclear forges inside of its cores. But I don't think that's the case here. I don't think it's lichen either, unless you entertain the possibility that in that one area, wherever that is, all the lichen that could exist in the Hollow Earth are concentrated in that one little spot, but there would have to be a reason for that. Also, you have cases like this, where throughout there are pockets of light, but they're not responsible for the majority of the illumination in the Hollow Earth. As you can see, the rest of the area is bathed in darkness. So scrap the lichen bit. The most plausible theory so far is it being the core. But I say scrap that too, because as I've said before, it would be immensely hot down there. It's none of these reasons, for the reasons I stated above. At least it wouldn't be in reality. Now for my theory. Okay, here it goes. The bright light that we see, that looks like the sun, is a portal. Hear me out. It's very clear that the Hollow Earth is more than just a place inside of the Earth. Clearly in a movie where creatures like Godzilla exist, which I guess could be possible, except the physics aren't always consistent, and apparently kaiju shit causes rainforests just to sprout out almost immediately after a morning bowel movement. We can have some room for extreme levity. You see, when the team enters the Hollow Earth, they pass through what looks like some sort of fantastical anus. One that they have to force themselves through, almost like a membrane to pass into this Hollow Earth. Let's take a look at that clip again.
Us I'd worry about. We're about to be launched 1,000 miles in 2 seconds until gravity inverts itself and spits us into free fall.
1,000 miles in 2 seconds? How is it possible to be launched 1,000 miles in 2 seconds? That's 500 miles a second. For more context, that is 1.8 million miles per hour. The speed of sound is 768 miles per hour. The speed of light in a vacuum, courtesy of Obeng Plus, is 670 million miles per hour, or 186,282 miles per second. Yet these dudes are acting like traveling 1.8 million miles per hour is just a night out on the town. Somehow I missed that the first time around when I watched this movie, and watching it the second and third time made me realize, especially seeing how they were traveling through the Hollow Earth, that these dudes were basically reenacting the intro to Doctor Who's time traveling in his TARDIS. So again, let's take a look at that scene of them journeying to the center of the Earth. Right there. What is that? You see, the first time that I viewed this, I was so caught up with what was happening to really think about what we were seeing. But what you're essentially seeing is time traveling, or alternatively put, dimension hopping. You see, I would argue that the Hollow Earth isn't actually directly in the Earth. The Hollow Earth is a dimension that you can access in the middle of the Earth. This would explain why the heat and pressure of the Earth's core doesn't affect them, and how they were able to reach there so quickly. You see what just happened there? That whole segment of sci-fi goodness was the team being transported to another dimension. Those tendrils leading to the midsection of the Earth act as flumes to this dimension. And this is where things are gonna get crazy, because I proposed something in the past that people hated me for and still do today. I don't know why, since these theories aren't official and are just done for fun, but some people just don't like questioning. But as a being, my mind is swimming with curiosity on how things work, or how they could work, even in fantasy situations. So, if there's anyone here listening or watching who is threatened by questions being asked about a fantastical world where supersized apes and kaiju that can disguise themselves as mountains, and large flying reptiles can sleep inside the magma in a volcano, and an alien three-headed dragon can talk to other kaiju that are not its species and constantly regenerate and speak telepathically, please leave the server and go drink some hot chocolate and take a nap, and stay far from this video because here we go. Just like Pacific Rim, I think in the monsterverse, the kaiju could be creatures from another realm. Maybe the Hollow Earth is one of the access points they have that are on our planet. After all, dimensions can exist within other dimensions or spaces. Rick and Morty mocked this when Rick exposed that within his engine car battery there was a whole microverse.
Holy crap! I thought we were inside your car battery, Rick! This is like a whole planet or something!
Thanks, Morty. I'm pretty proud of this bad boy. Check it out. I put a spatially tessellated void inside a modified temporal field until a planet developed intelligent life. I then introduced that life to the wonders of electricity, which they now generate on a global scale.
In this case, it's a little bit more fantastical, and there's actually more similarity to the Lion Witch and the Wardrobe and the Closet to Narnia. In the Lion Witch and the Wardrobe, some kids explore their new house, and when they enter a wardrobe, they're transported or walk into a magical world called Narnia. In the case of the Chronicles of Narnia, the entrance to the magical world is basically a doorway that selects the few that can see it or go through it. So there's not just one wardrobe where you can get to Narnia, there can be several. The Hollow Earth seems to work the same way, but instead it's just always there. Or is it? Is it possible that if Kong had not been with the crew, that they would have ended up dying just like Dr. Ling's brother? Is it possible that this portal or doorway to the Hollow Earth is only accessible to kaiju like Kong? So since we've gotten into all of that, let's get back to the question of the light. If the Hollow Earth is in fact another dimension that's accessible through the midsection of the Earth, is it not possible that there could be a portal that connects to other worlds where other kaiju could come from? I know people don't like to think about this, and for the people that have hopefully left the server so they're not triggered, is it so far-fetched to speculate that a lot of the other kaiju came from space or other worlds? If Ghidorah himself, one of the kaiju he can speak to other kaiju on Earth, came from space? You know, I really don't get it. I don't get why people are so upset when you propose that theory that the other kaiju might not originally be from here either. With some of the powers that a lot of them have and the way they look, and figuring that they were here for a very long time but no other animals have their kind of abilities, it makes sense to at least speculate that these creatures might not originally be from here, or at least not their ancestors. And that light at the end of the tunnel could just be an entrance into their world, or a connection point for a whole bunch of different worlds. Or it could just be a concentrated point of all the energy we see strewn about in the Hollow Earth that Godzilla draws on to heal himself. This is just another theory that I'm throwing out there. And one of the greatest things I think gives me the greatest satisfaction is the fact that a whole new world has been created so it can be talked about and discussed. Surely you're not going to arrive at any official hard evidence or conclusions, as this is fantasy, but constant quest for answers is what makes a movie memorable and what earns the respect of many, because I believe the success of a movie doesn't lie in how much money it makes or how much people like it when they see it, but it's how long you can keep people talking about it. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.